I'm not holding my breath personally. If you want my honest opinion right now, before we've seen anything about Season 4, I think Capcom will change Juri very little. I think that they will probably give her a couple of buffs, a couple of nerfs to balance that out and say, yeah, look, she's fine now. You got your buffs, you got your nerfs, she's balanced, go, stop bitching for another year.
Well, I sure hope somebody picks up that phone.
Do what?
Because I f***ing called it!
Oh, Jesus, boys, girls, in-betweeners, today is a very sad day. It's Season 4, and as you can see from the intro there, I pretty much fucking called it, didn't I? I said that Capcom were just going to give her some very minor changes, handful of buffs, handful of nerfs, and call it a day because they're pretty happy with where she is on the tier list, despite the fact that she has been low tier ever since day one. And that's exactly what's happened in version 4, Season 4, whatever you want to call it. It's a really bitterly disappointing day, I have to say, because especially when the patch dropped before the patch notes dropped, because I don't know reasons, because Capcom like giving away their own announcements, they like spoiling their own reveals, I don't know. But I was in the lab practicing Juri, and it started to dawn on me that nothing was really different, that she was still the same as she was in 3.5, and now we have the official patch notes available to us, which we're going to go through step by step, and yeah, I can tell you she is almost identical, and that is really disappointing and really aggravating for a character that pretty much everyone universally agrees needs to be buffed. At least to some degree, maybe not off the charts, and I'm fine with that. She probably doesn't need it. But she at least needs some buffs, and Capcom just seemed very, very, very reluctant to do that. And this patch unfortunately has proved my worst fears. So, enough of that. Let's go through the changes one by one, shall we? Okay, so the first change we got is a recovery to back, well, the change to back recovery, I should say. So, I never actually really bothered with back recovery on Juri that much, just because she never really recovered very differently. It was never really a good escape option that I found, and as a result, I'll freely admit I don't see a lot of difference here. There's obviously some, maybe it's a little bit further, I don't know, it just says adjusted the recovery motion. But as you can see, she's not recovering a long way out there, there's not really a huge difference, so maybe you can tell me in the comments, I don't know. But this is not a big change one way or the other, really, so that's it for that. Alright, second one is her V-gauge meter gain from a crush counter has been reduced from 150 to 120. This isn't necessarily enough because it's more of a global change that has happened to pretty much every character in this game. Any character who has like a good crush counter that they can throw out in neutral, and Juri happens to be her standard HK, yeah, it's a decent crush counter. It's not the best in the world, but it's decent as far as crush counters go because it has a good range and it carries her forward. They've reduced the V-gauge gain from that from 150 to 120, so I'm not particularly upset about that. I'm more particularly upset about the fact that it still has awful follow-up options, essentially, so that's a bit of a drag. But, yeah, I'm not really going to call that enough. I'm just going to call that a global change, essentially, that basically everyone got hit with, so it's not a big deal. Same goes for the next one, which is Crouching HK, which is a sweep. V-gauge meter gain from crush counter increased from 100 to 120. So they're trying to basically reduce the benefits you get from throwing out crush counters as neutral, because throwing these out are very low risk, high reward, whereas going for a sweep is actually a much higher risk option because you are massively unsafe no matter which character you play using a sweep. So if you get a crush counter on a sweep, you get a bit more of a reward from it now for your V-gauge. And again, global change happens to pretty much every character, so I'm not really calling it a buff or enough. Now, the next one is the Khushu, which is works in both normal and V-Trigger 1. And Khushu, if you didn't know, is her air target combo, which she performs by using medium punch and heavy kick in the air. Now, here it is. You can see here. Now, the change, which you may have just noticed, is the fact that this no longer causes knockdown on the ground. It basically allows you to start a combo. Now, this is the only buff in the entire patch, and it's not a bad one. I'm not going to complain about this one. If you did a standard combo for Juri, say a jump in, like my favorite bread and butter is jumping heavy, back heavy, DP. 258 damage. You can do the same combo now using the air target to start it up and get a little bit more damage. You go from 258 to 271. So it's a little bit of a boost in damage. Not a huge amount, but it's decent. But probably what's more interesting about this, and this is something which will require more lab time on my part and other people's part to really see how good this is that I'm not really going to show it to you now, but essentially when you do the Khushu, depending on how high you hit it on the character, with how high Juri is compared to the ground, basically she has a lot more hit stun on this, and block stun as well. So what that means is that I was messing around with this before on Ken doing a 3-frame reversal after block, and essentially if you time it well enough, you can actually do the Khushu, land, and then if they block, you can do a stand heavy kick and be a 3-frame. That's how plush she is after the Khushu on landing. You could not do that off a heavy kick, you could not do that off a heavy punch, you could not do it off anything else. It was basically it's a new option which could potentially open up some paths for Juri in terms of if she wants to take the risk of jumping in and they block, she'll actually be plus enough to get some shenanigans going when she hits the ground. So that's interesting, and it's exciting that, okay, here's an option where I may get a little bit more offensive pressure going on, and so I'm definitely all for this one change. It was the one change that I'm actually happy with. It's not what I asked for. There are plenty of other things that we didn't get that I would have loved, like, less pushback on stand medium punch, things like that. But essentially, that's the one bit of good news from this patch. Now, next part is Heavy 10 Sinrin, which is her DP. Hit and projectile invincibility window changed from 3 frames to 7 to 8 frames to 3 frames to 8 frames. Essentially, you get 1 extra frame of projectile invincibility on Heavy 10 Sinrin. I haven't tested this, to be fair, but I'm almost positive this will make no difference to Juri in terms of using this as an anti-fireball tool. In regards to that, which is 0, you never use this as an anti-fireball tool because Juri has better ones already in terms of her, EX10 Sinrin, sorry, X-rated Satsu is completely viable, invincible from start to finish. And, V-Skill obviously has a lot of fireball invincibility as well, so why you'd risk something on a move which only has 5 frames of fireball invincibility, I have no idea. It's not really a buff. I'm not calling it a buff, it's just a stupid change. It's a token change that I talked about, that Capcom would make to be like, oh, here, see, we improved things. We gave you 1 extra frame, aren't you happy about that? No, fuck off, Capcom. Next change is EX10 Sinrin. Increase the damage taken from an attack that hits during the move's duration by 1.2 times. Again, global change. A lot of characters got this kind of change. I think this is to kind of this is a weird way of winding back the scale down of crush counters in Season 3.5, I think it was? It was Season 3 or 3.5. In a sense, basically, they nerfed crush counters to the point where they were almost not worth doing as a punish. For a lot of moves, and this kind of reverses that a little bit. So now if your opponent does a move which is very punishable, like a flash kick or a DP or anything like that, you can hit him with the old crush counter and get a little bit more damage again. Not too much, but a little bit more. So I think this is Capcom's way of just trying to balance out the stupid global changes they made in previous patches without actually reverting those changes. Feng Shui Engine Alpha V-Trigger 1 can now be hit by an attack during the screen freeze upon V-Trigger activation. This is again global change. It's happening to a lot of characters. Essentially, if you use your screen freeze, that's the wrong V-Trigger, but we'll get to that in a second. If you use your screen freeze to basically allow you to try and reversal a move that when people were jumping in, things like that, there was a quirk apparently where sometimes it gave you invincibility, and that's now been removed, so that's fine. No one ever used V-Trigger activation for Juri as an anti-air. We always use it as a confirm, regardless of whether you did it off Fireball like me or off Satsu like some other people. No one ever used it for an anti-air, so that's neither here nor there. It's just it's a global change. Who cares? And the final change is Feng Shui Engine Beta V-Trigger 2. Now this has been a point of contention for me and essentially every other Juri player in the sense that it's a V-Trigger which is so spectacularly bad that the joke is commonly made that Juri doesn't have a second V-Trigger, because why on earth would you use this piece of garbage here? It's awful. It's terrible. The meter drain is pointless. It gives Juri no real advantage. It gives her no offensive pressure. It's just an awful, awful move. And Capcom have clearly seen this in their supreme wisdom and changed it so that now you can cancel it off a Fireball into the V-Trigger, or you can cancel it off a Roiden Satsu into V-Trigger. So now you can basically get you can go for a little bit more of an extended combo, so something like that. You know, you get 343 damage off that, which is great, except it's not really a huge boost of what you'd get normally. Also, you can do it off of a Roid and Satsu now as well, so you can get some juggle style points for that as well. Something like that. It's, yeah, it's still completely pointless. The damage scaling kicks in way too high before you even start the V-trigger, so anything you do after that is still completely pointless in terms of actually getting damage. It's a token change. It's something to appease people who are saying it's a really bad V-trigger. It doesn't make it any better. Anyone who tells you otherwise is a liar, and it's still just absolutely worthless, and no one's ever going to use it ever. And fuck Capcom for trying to just do a lazy, half-assed approach to fixing it rather than actually just overhauling the thing entirely. So that's it. That's all the changes to Juri. 9/10 of them are global changes. One of them is actually a positive change, and one of them is completely worthless. And that's it. So this really isn't going to change Juri's position on tier lists at all. She's still pretty much going to be a low tier character. It may bump her up a little bit just because other characters got nerfed as well. There weren't really too many characters who got big buffs in this patch. It was just a lot of... I feel like this patch was a lot of normalization. It was really just trying to basically set the status quo. Like, the game is mostly where Capcom wants it to be, and they really don't want to shake things up. So if your character is low tier, then your character gets to stay low tier. And that's kind of it. I've got nothing else at this point. Obviously, this is still day one. There could be things that I discovered afterwards, which I don't know about. And I'm fine. If people find new things that I haven't covered in this video, please feel free to list them in the comments below. But right now, these are my day one impressions of the Season 4 patch. We can be optimistic and say maybe they'll change things in the Season 4.5 patch, but I really, really doubt it. I think that, like I said way back in that Season 4 prediction video, that Capcom have Juri pretty much where they wanted to be in terms of the tiers, and they see no reason to change that. So, again, if anything else, Season 4.5 will be even more minute changes and tweaks just to shut people up. That's all I've got for now, guys. So, kisses, hugs, belly rubs. And hopefully, we'll have some better news next time. I'll see you then.